Hi, welcome to Truth and Reality. I am Ashley. I'm here with my friend Melissa again, and this podcast is dedicated to just that, talking about the ups, the downs, the in-betweens of life and how faith and truth and God fits into all those spaces. So, hey, Melissa,
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
thanks for coming back
What
on.
what's your drink of choice today in that little coffee mug?
I am
Very little, actually.
drinking LaCroix. LaCroix. I was like, sparkly water. That's what my kids call it. So, I'm
Sparkly
drinking
water.
LaCroix. What are you having today?
Did I forget my mug? I did. So I'll just a shameless plug. I love Olipop. I think that's what it's called, lemon lime. I'm kind of hooked. I gave up soda a year ago, and this is my little treat. So, yeah, lemon
Oh,
lime. Kind of
I've
similar to yours.
Yeah, I've never tried Olipop. Is it sweetened?
I'm hooked. Yep. I think you like it. I think you need to try it.
Okay, I do. I know you drink
Shameless
that.
plug. Yes. What'd you say?
I know you drink that. I was like, we're not sponsored by them
We
at
are not
all. Go
sponsored.
for
If
it.
they want to send it to me, I will gladly take it. I love all the flavors.
Ah, that's awesome. Well,
What
good.
should we
Well,
talk about today? I think we know what we're going to talk about.
yeah, we're going to talk about friendship today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the need for friendship. Where do we find friendship? What do we value in friendship now that we're in a different season of life, or just even now that we're older versus when we were in our 20s? And so we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to share a little bit about our friendship and how that started. So I'll let you go first, Melissa. What does friendship mean to you in your 40s and now just in this season of life?
Yeah, I think friendship to me now, Ash, in my 40s looks really different in my 30s and really different in my 20s. And I think even what sparked this conversation for you and I to talk about friendship on here is just really realizing who we had become and how friendships now look really different than they were when I was first married and even in my 20s. And I don't know about you, but I think I always kind of struggled with friendships and just keeping them and maintaining them. I don't know why. I don't know if it was me, but just probably didn't have a lot of friends. But I think the friends that are in my life currently in this season at 45 years old are friends that are very consistent. They're very authentic and real with me. They're honest. They're friends that can hold any type of space, whether that's a good day I'm having or a bad day. And so I think the older you get, maybe you don't agree, but I would feel that the older you get, the more you value the friendships that you do have. And I have quality friends and not quantity. And I have come to be okay with that. Probably the circle of my life in the last probably 3.5, almost 4 years has gotten smaller, but there's a lot of beauty in that. Not to say I had bad friends at all before. I think I've changed and people have changed. And so I would say just people who are truly authentic and loving and genuine and people that can make me laugh and friends that can see me through all seasons of life. And you are definitely one of them. You have seen me through so many seasons of life. And I'm thinking of when I met you, and I can remember it specifically. And I know we'll go into it, but I'll just share my side. Is that like I came home? I believe it was like from the funeral or something, planning Matt's funeral, and you were in the laundry room, and like you were folding my clothes or you were cleaning part of my house, and I was like, who is this girl? And I had seen you before at church, and I just knew like in my heart, like just this strong feeling that you will forever be a friend. And here we are almost 5 years later, and I'm like, you are more than a forever friend. You are like a sister to me.
Oh,
And so
same.
grateful for friendship. That was
Right,
a really
same.
long answer, but there you go.
No, well, that's great. Well, and what's interesting is we can even talk about that starting with friendship. Like friendships are born in different seasons and different purposes and different um they like they just happen in ways you're unexpected. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
I am in your laundry room folding your clothes after your husband passed away and you're like, what is she doing there? Right? We had met, I don't know if you know this or remember this, but we met must have been 6 years ago at our church. And then I ran into you at James J. Hill days when
I
you guys
do
were
remember.
all walking around.
Yes, now I
And
do
then
remember.
and
Yeah,
then we actually had went to sisterhood together at our church. And so that's where it started. And what's interesting is yes, I did just appear
because
in
I
her
remember
house.
you. Not to interrupt, I remember you pregnant with your twins, and I looked down and I'm like, that girl is going to have her hands full. But I didn't know you, you know?
Yes. Well, and what's interesting is, in that season when we were both in sisterhood, we were both in church, we didn't know each other. Sisterhood was like a weekly women's group
Yep.
that got together that Melissa was leading at the time at our church, and I was attending. And she was also going through chemo with
Yep.
her late husband at the time. And so I felt like God was like, support her, like show up for her. And so I remember talking with some of the other ladies that were in the group with us, and maybe they were more closely knit to you. And so I remember saying, like, what could we do for her? What could be? So I think they were my in to your house.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of us who would come over, or we would get laundry for you, and I'd bring it to her house and she'd fold it. And then another one of our friends would clean your house with me. And I felt like the Lord was like, support her. And in that season for you, it was so interesting because I was also going through really hard. I was still in my marriage, but it was a really hard
Yep.
season. And I felt like for me, God was trying to tell me, get your eyes off yourself and serve
Mhm.
somebody else.
Yeah.
And and
And
so
I
it
had
was
no
so
idea that you were walking through that. You know, I mean, truly at that point of grief, I couldn't do the laundry. And I know people listening are going to think that's crazy. Like, how could you not do the laundry? I couldn't clean. I think all I could do was get out of bed every day and feed the kids and just make one, foot in front of another. And I thought you guys coming in and doing just simple acts was just like me just feeling God's love of like, I'm not alone. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's such a beauty in that. And I didn't know actually until you just said that, like you were walking through hard, but yet you were serving me. I mean, what a beautiful thing in the midst of something hard.
well, and I think too, yeah, God puts people together. And I love how he put us together. We went through two completely different things,
Yep.
but we're kind of walking healing journeys tandem, which has been really cool. And I just
Hmm.
remember we were with you, and there were a few of us helping clean your house and getting some support for you. And then COVID hit. And I don't know if you remember this, but I remember driving to your house and sitting outside on your steps with you
Yep.
and talking to you. And
Yep.
that's really where our friendship started. And it was
Hmm.
more like showing up. And it was so
Yep.
interesting because it was so funny because I kept showing up and being like, did she even want me here? Does she know? Like, why am I showing up? And I just kept showing up, and we helped you
Yep.
move and pack
Yep.
and go through things. And I think friendship really changed and hit the ground running, where it's like,
Yep.
no, friendship is showing up for
Yep.
people. And I was
Yep.
learning that too. And then
Yep.
the other thing that was interesting that came out of this, and I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, that I think tandem to me showing up to help you, you were showing up, showing me how to process emotion and be vulnerable with another person.
Mhm.
Because that's something I hadn't learned and I didn't know how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So that's so interesting that, like, for me, I knew how to serve people. I knew how to
Yep.
show up. I knew how to get things done. I didn't know how to connect with people in friendship by being
Yep.
vulnerable, being open, being
Yeah.
honest, saying this is what I'm struggling with or going through. Like you said, you didn't know
Right.
I was going through anything.
No.
Um,
Well,
and
and I
so it's
think at the time when I was so deep in my grief, I could not communicate what I needed. And so anytime you pull in the driveway and I would see your car, I was so grateful that I was like, I have someone to talk to or just sit with me in that space. And I think that is the beauty of friendship is to be able to sit in that space, whether it's a great day or a bad day, and sit with someone. And even if it's just requiring just listening, you and I have talked about that. Being a good friend is just not necessarily always giving the right advice. It's just listening. Even now, you and I having a good or bad day. It's just like, hey, just checking in. Anything you want to talk about? How are you doing? So, but yeah, I had no clue that you were walking through those things, in those moments.
yeah. Well, and we have no idea. Even like, so we've been friends. That was 5 years ago, about
Yep.
right
Yep.
where it
Yep.
kind of started and whatnot. We're coming up on like 4 years of being
Yep.
friends and whatnot. But it's so interesting because it's like I was learning from you and you were
Yep.
unaware of it. You were unaware that
So,
like God was helping me and teach
yeah.
me how to have an emotional capacity in relationships. And I'm not saying I never had emotional capacity,
Yeah.
but how to go to those deep places and actually be real and vulnerable, and allowing me and showing me how people support each other, like you're saying. creating that space, holding that space for each other. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily tell each other what to do or give advice. We just sit
Yep.
and I've learned
Yep.
and validate and show up and just let people share their hearts. And I
Yep.
think that's that space where our relationship has gone really deep because we were both walking through tragic situations
Yeah.
and we were able to go there. And I think there's a bonding and a resilience that's built with people when you bare your heart, right, to each other.
So true. Right. That is so true. Tell me about you. What are you in this season? I know we're a little bit different in our age, but I feel like you're keeping me young because I won't say your age, but I'm in my 40s and you're in your 30s. But tell me, in your season of life, Ash, what are you looking for in friendship, or what do you value in this season?
Yeah, I think friendship for me comes in different capacities, right? Like, I value our friendship and I love that. I would say I go the deepest with you. Like, I want someone to be real with, to be honest with, to be vulnerable. I think we both have talked about our struggles, our highs and lows in our faith walk too. And I think
Yep.
I value that because I want to have that real honest conversation. And I want someone to be able to say, yeah, me too, to know I'm not the only one. So I
Yep.
value honest conversation. I value, yeah, that trust. I think there's a
Yep.
lot of trust that's been built that I can share what I'm going through, you share what you, and it stays
Yep.
between us and we
Yep.
support each other. I think prayer is huge. I think
Yep.
that we know we could just text each other and say, hey, I need prayer, or hey, this is
Yep.
going on. And we know we have each other's back. I think those are important things to me in this season. Um, still have good friendships with my friends in high school. I think I value people knowing me, right? So
Yeah.
now, even over 20 years, like valuing knowing where you can just get together and pick up where you left off. I
Yeah.
value that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm looking for, like meaningful relationships, real conversation, and trust. And I love when people show up too, right?
Yeah.
The actual physical support and like being around and doing stuff together. That's been, yeah, really fun, really great. Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, we've come a long way. I know someone asked me the other day, like, she's probably been a forever friend and you've known her probably since college. And I was like, actually not. Like, we met and I was like, it's really just been amazing. I said something really, really hard. Both of us were walking through different seasons of hard. And I think that's where, again, our friendship was so great. I was hating that what you were walking through, but yet I was grateful for the space that you held because both of us were obviously given this narrative that we weren't expecting to ever happen in our lives. And so you were walking out becoming, a single mom with 4 kids. I was too.
Hmm.
You had wanted to have plans on the weekend. You were feeling lonely or wanting, and so was I. So it was like we started these dinner dates and things we do together and go on trips. So it's just amazing how friendships can bring and hold such a value in your life for places that you never saw it happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's the other thing too. There might be people on here who are like, well, I don't have deep friendships, or I don't have like
Yeah.
a group of girls or a sisterhood or a women's
Yeah.
group I can go to. And, I would say too, like I felt that way
Yeah.
before, I would say before the last like 3 or 4 years. I felt
Yeah.
that way. I had friends that were good friends, but they're out of the state or,
Yeah.
away. I have sisters that I get to talk to, and I love that. And they ended up moving away, which was so sad, but still
I
talk
know,
to
I'm
her.
sad for you. I'm glad you get to go
Um,
visit them. Not the same, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yes. So, and it's great, but I also think that like there were things. I was going to the gym. I was going
Yep.
to classes there. I was going to sisterhood at our church and trying to be involved, but friendships weren't happening. And
Yep.
nothing was going past, surface level. And I couldn't figure out why. And what's interesting, hindsight now, right, is
Yep.
because I wasn't open, I wasn't vulnerable. I remember this very, very vividly. I was going to a kickboxing class. This was before you worked out with me, Melissa. We
Okay.
worked out with
Yep.
a group of ladies,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
I was going to a kickboxing class and there was one girl from our church who was there and then another woman that we just would hang out with in the kickboxing class. And it was interesting because it was one of those relationships where you'd be like, "Oh, hi, hi, how are you?" That's it.
Yep.
And one day I had come in, and this was like right after we decided we were going to have a divorce and walk through all that. And I walked in and they're like, "Oh, hi, how do you look so good?" I remember them saying, and I was like, "Oh," they're like, "Did you lose weight?" And here I am. I did lose weight, but from trauma, not from health, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, yeah, I think I've lost like 7 to 10 pounds." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh." They're like, "Wow, what have you been doing?" And I had that moment where was I going to say, like, "Oh, thanks, I've been working out," which
Yep.
is not true, or to be vulnerable. And I was like, people I didn't know, I was just
Yeah.
acquaintances with. And I said, "Do you know what? I'm actually walking through a divorce and I am just losing a lot of weight because of stress and
Mhm.
anxiety and grief." And they looked at me and they were like, "So sorry. Thank you for telling us. Tell me more."
Mhm.
And they met
Yeah.
me with passion. They talked to
Yep.
me. And what was so interesting is like a year later, my friend Joy, who asked the question,
Yeah.
goes, "You know what? I don't know if we would have been friends past this class if you wouldn't have opened up and like been vulnerable." And now we're all
Interesting.
really good friends.
Yes. I had
And
no idea about that story.
so interesting because it's like oftentimes we want deep friendships.
Yep.
Oftentimes we want have to have conversations and be vulnerable and be known by people,
Yep.
but sometimes we aren't willing to risk it, right? That was
It's so
very risky to
yep.
risk that in a
Yep.
conversation.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And I think there's moments that I struggle too as well. Or there's, you meet people in the gym or like you said, a coffee shop. Like I've tried to put myself out there in spaces and places of meeting new friends. And I think I don't know if women just struggle with it or if it's males as well, but I think being vulnerable, like being authentic, sharing my story and, connecting and getting past just surface level conversation, right? Because we're going to all have those types of friendship. But I think
Yeah.
being able to be real and vulnerable, right? Saying why you had weight loss and saying what you were walked through was able to help
Mhm.
you connect with people, That's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we're learning too. I'm learning this
Yeah.
too, that
The
we have
work in
circles.
progress. Yes.
Yeah, and we have circles of friends and there's layers. There's certain things I tell you that I don't tell other people that
Yep.
are my close friends, right? I There's just different levels of what you share and when you share and how you share, and those can grow. They're not like set, right? People
Right.
can move in and out depending on, time and space and season. Um, you know, relationships ebb and flow. And I just think that's the beautiful part of relationships is that they like grow and they evolve. And it's
Yep.
interesting is because they're made. They don't just happen like that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
They're made with time and investment and, actual thought and care that goes into it. It's not something
Right.
that's just like, oh, instantaneous, right?
Right. And I think it takes right effort on both, just like any type of relationship. And you and I have talked about that. It's like if you want good friendships, or if there's people listening on here that want and desire to have good friendships around them, I think it
Mhm.
requires putting yourself out there. You said putting yourself in environments where you can meet new people and then being able to be authentic and real. And, you and I are real mindful of making sure we don't monopolize the conversation or I'm just calling you talking about everything for 20 minutes. Checking
Right.
in, how are you doing? How can I help you? What can I hold for you today? I think you and I use that term, just are you
Mhm.
struggling with something? Can I hold that space for you today? I mean, I think through widowhood, I've realized so many people have said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I feel so bad. Rather than now you and I say, like, what can I hold for you today? What's that hard thing you're holding? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think friendships are a gift because like we had talked, we as humans aren't meant to do life alone, right?
So true.
And in relationships, whether that's, friendships or family relationships or a spouse relationship, one person can't hold everything for you, right? They
Yep.
can't be
100%.
everything. And it's so important to, which I did not when I was married. I didn't have a lot of good friendships or deep friendships or people that I could just go and hang out with and spend
Right.
time with. And so I kind of placed all of that in one avenue. And, life is way, way more full when you do build other relationships around you and how important that is because
Right.
relationships hold space, they hold support, they hold fun, right? We have
Right.
fun.
Totally. We do. We do. And I agree. Like, I think through marriage, I had some good close friendships, but I think a lot of it, I was immersed in motherhood and Matt was traveling and gone. And so I didn't probably invest in them as heavily as I am now. And I think, you and I have talked about even the season of singleness that you and I are both single. I think you value the friendships because you hold a space and help me. And friendships do in that season where you are feeling, you and I have talked about lonely. We're not meant to be in this world and we're not meant to be alone. That during that pandemic, that time was really, really lonely. I felt at times that it was just like loneliness was just going to eat me up. And I think I realized more and more we were not created. It's not in our DNA to live in this world alone. We were created to have community. We were created to have fellowship and have people in our life, whether that's through marriage, whether that's through friendships or relationships. I think it's so important and I value it and cherish it more than ever.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
so grateful for you again,
Thankful for you too.
Yeah. We come a long way, huh?
We have, man, we've seen each other and grown through a lot,
We really have.
even
And I'm
to the
excited
point.
for what's ahead. I'm really
Yes.
excited for you and all that you're doing and stepping out. And, you have helped me. And I know some of the viewers don't know that, but Ashley's really helped me just evolve and become and figure out who I want to be and what I want to become and pushing me in my dreams. So I think that's a key factor too that we didn't talk about is find people in your corner that will challenge you and encourage you. You are a big dreamer and you're helping me accomplish some things on my big bucket list of things that I want to do. So you got to find people who will champion you and be in that corner to cheer you on.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that friendship, right? You can support the lows, you can support the highs, you can support like the past and what we've walked through. But friendship also comes alongside and is like, hey, I see this in you, or hey, here's what I'm dreaming. And when you get around people who have similar dreams, who have, aspirations, it's like contagious and exciting, right? To
Right.
be like, oh, maybe I want to do something like that. Or like, oh, I don't know if I can be vulnerable and step out and do a podcast. Oh, wait, here we are. We're doing it.
Well, because you and I have talked, like, I am so proud of you for writing the book. And then when you asked me to be on here, I said, Ash, there's a moment, and people don't know this, but I'll share it here, is that I had never shared this part of my story and this part of my life of anything that had happened after Matt. And so I was a little nervous and I shared that with you. And I took some time to pray and really just ask God if this was what I was supposed to be doing. And he's like, I want you to come walk alongside her and talk to women and help and encourage and let them hear your story and her story. And so here we are. But like I said, there was definitely a moment where I was like, I don't know, I've never shared and been this vulnerable before. So, but it's amazing to see what's become of it, And so, yeah, grateful to hold the space.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's why we created the podcast. That's the
Yeah.
space we wanted to create, was that space of friendship that we've shared and walked through together to say like, hey, join us. I know you're not
Yeah.
you other people are not talking back to us in the conversation, but giving space to talk about the situations and the life, because our stories and our testimonies and our hearts and what we've walked through, like, can meet other people in that same space. Like you're saying, like your story and what you've walked through and you being vulnerable can give hope to somebody listening. And that's the whole point of that, right? Sharing
Yeah.
love, sharing hope, and being
Yeah.
like, hey, I've been here and
Yeah.
here's kind of how I walked through it. Not saying
Yeah.
it's the only way or the right way, just saying
Yeah.
like, hey, we've been through it too. Yeah.
Yep. This is what I've done. This is what's worked, just to encourage people and cheer them on the journey, and not help them to feel not alone. And I think that's what you've done such a beautiful job, is really in the midst of really, really hard things, along with God and along with my relationship with him. It's just helping you not to feel alone, right? Sometimes as a mom and a friend and as a wife, you can feel unseen in the journey. And I think the beauty of friendship is that, you have those people who can see you, see what you're walking through and keep championing and cheering you on the way.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I know you feel this way too about your story, and I felt this way about my book, and sharing that out. I was like, "Oh my gosh, everything I'm thinking is now out." Not everything, but a lot of what I'm processing thinking is now out for anybody to hear. And
Yeah.
I felt like, "Okay, God, I'll do it. I'll do it if it helps one person feel seen, feel
Right.
known, feel
Yep.
like, oh, I'm not the only one." And it's
Yep.
just been beautiful too, to see friendships come out of that, and people that
Right.
I've met and had done book studies with, that I'm like, just have now connections with on a deeper level like this, where friendships are blossoming. So
Yeah. No, totally agree. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Melissa, for sharing, and thank
Yeah.
you for talking about friendship with me.
Yeah. Grateful for it. We all need it. It's so important in our lives, more than ever.
Yes, yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. We're going to continue the conversation. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Peace Runs Deep, and we'll see you next time.